What's the most desperate moment you've ever witnessed? A maid's hands saved a baby's life. A wife's hands tried to take hers away. This is that story. The McCubbin Foundation Gala. 200 elite guests sipping champagne. Florence McCubbin on stage giving a televised speech about family values. But 3 floors up, 6-month-old Theodore had stopped breathing. Jessica Torres heard it, not a normal cry, but something desperate, weakening, wrong. She abandoned her cleaning cart and ran. Theodore's face was blue, his chest barely moving. Her pre-med training kicked in. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. 15 cycles later, Theodore coughed. He was breathing. Wilton McCubbin burst through the door, black tuxedo askew, terror on his face. Behind him, Florence appeared, immaculate in burgundy. But her first words weren't about Theodore's health. "We need to keep this quiet. Don't ruin the event." Jessica saw it then, the look on Florence's face as she held the breathing baby. Not relief. Not gratitude. Calculation. And in that moment, Jessica Torres, who had learned to stay invisible, realized she'd just made herself dangerously visible to the wrong person. Jessica stood outside Wilton McCubbin's study at exactly 8 a.m., hands clasped so tight her knuckles had gone white. She knew what this meant. She'd overstepped. Crossed a boundary no maid was supposed to cross. Made herself visible in a world where people like her were meant to remain invisible. She knocked twice. "Come in." Wilton's voice was tired. The study was all dark wood and leather, walls lined with first editions Jessica recognized from her university days, back when she believed she might become Dr. Torres someday. Wilton sat behind an enormous desk, still wearing yesterday's dress shirt, wrinkled and open at the collar. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. "Miss Torres. Sit, please." Jessica perched on the edge of the leather chair, spine straight, eyes fixed on a spot past his left shoulder. Never make direct eye contact with the billionaire. Rule number 1. I owe you an apology and a debt I can never fully repay. Jessica blinked. "Sir, the doctor said if you'd been even 2 minutes later, Theodore would have suffered permanent brain damage. Or worse." His voice cracked. "You saved my son's life. I looked at your file this morning. Pre-med at University of the Philippines. Top of your class. You left in your second year after your parents died." Heat flooded Jessica's cheeks. She hadn't known they kept such detailed records. "I want to offer you a position. Theodore's dedicated caretaker. Full-time. The salary would be triple your current pay." Jessica's breath caught. Triple. That would cover her siblings' school fees, Gabriel's asthma medication, everything. But absolutely not. Florence McCubbin stood in the doorway, immaculate in a cream silk blouse. "Florence, we discussed this. No Wilton, you decided. Without consulting me." Her heels clicked against hardwood as she entered. "She's just a maid. We have nannies for this. Trained professionals with credentials and references." "Jessica has medical training," Wilton said quietly. "And she's the only person Theodore responds to." "That's ridiculous. He's 6 months old. The night nurse tried to give him his bottle this morning. He screamed for 40 minutes straight. When Jessica came in to clean, he stopped crying the moment he heard her voice." Florence's jaw tightened. "This is inappropriate. This is what's best for our son." Wilton's tone carried an edge Jessica had never heard before. "Jessica, do you accept the position?" Jessica looked between them, at Wilton's desperate hope, at Florence's barely controlled fury. She thought of Maria's last email. "We might have to pull Gabriel out of school. We can't afford both him and Sophia." Yes, Jessica whispered. I accept. Florence's eyes locked onto hers, and in that moment, Jessica saw her future written in the other woman's cold gaze. She'd just made a very powerful enemy. That afternoon, Jessica wired her first payment home. Maria called, crying with relief and joy. Jessica sat in her small room in the staff quarters, phone pressed to her ear, trying to feel the same joy. But all she could feel was the weight of Florence's stare, following her through the hallways like a shadow that would never leave. Wilton McCubbin slept in the east wing. Florence slept in the west. Between them lay 40 feet of marble hallway and 5 years of carefully maintained distance. They'd perfected the performance. Every charity gala, every business dinner, every society page photograph showed the ideal couple, his hand at the small of her back, her smile radiant as she leaned into his shoulder. The McCubbins were American royalty, a merger of two financial dynasties that made sense on every spreadsheet and none of the places that mattered. Florence still remembered their wedding. The photographer had captured Wilton lifting her veil, the moment before the kiss, and in that frozen second, Florence had seen the truth in his eyes: duty, not desire. Obligation, not love. She'd felt the same. Her father had made it clear: the Ashford fortune was drowning in debt, salvageable only through strategic alliance. Wilton McCubbin was that alliance. 28, Harvard-educated, heir to a technology empire, recently orphaned. His father's final wish had been to see him married to someone suitable. Florence Ashford was eminently suitable. The kiss had been brief, professional. Like signing a contract. 5 years later, their interactions remained transactional. Tuesday mornings over coffee to coordinate schedules. I have the museum benefit on the 14th. I'll be in Tokyo until the 23rd. Fine. Good. No arguments, no passion, no mess. Until Theodore. Florence hadn't wanted children. They complicated things, disrupted routines. But Wilton had insisted, and the McCubbin board had made pointed comments about legacy and succession. So Theodore had been conceived through scheduled intimacy, born through planned cesarean, and integrated into their lives like any other obligation. Florence had hired the best nannies money could buy. Let them handle the crying, the feeding, the endless neediness. But now, Florence stood in the darkened hallway outside the nursery, watching through the half-open door. Past 10 o'clock. Wilton should have been in his study, reviewing quarterly reports. Instead, he stood frozen just inside the nursery threshold, his tie loosened, his expression unguarded. Jessica sat in the rocking chair, Theodore cradled against her chest. She was singing soft, melodic words in Tagalog that Florence didn't understand. The baby's eyes were heavy, his tiny fist curled around Jessica's finger. The lamp cast them in warm amber light, like some Renaissance painting of Madonna and Child. And Wilton. Florence's stomach turned to ice. The way he was looking at them, at her, with such raw tenderness, such unguarded longing. In 5 years of marriage, Wilton had never looked at Florence that way. Not once. Jessica glanced up, startled to find him there. "Oh, Mr. McCubbin. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you come in." "He's almost asleep, don't stop," Wilton said softly. "Please. It's beautiful. What you're singing." A faint blush colored Jessica's cheeks. "It's just an old lullaby. My mother used to, it's working." He's calm. With you, he's always calm. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Florence recognized immediately: possibility. The dangerous kind. Florence waited until both doors had closed before pulling out her phone. Her hands shook slightly, with rage or fear, she couldn't tell. Perhaps both. She scrolled through her contacts, found the name she needed. The call connected on the second ring. Marcus? It's Florence. I need a favor. I need information on someone. Jessica Torres. She works at the estate. I want everything: family, finances, history, any vulnerabilities. Everything. A pause. Is this about Wilton? Florence's reflection stared back at her from the darkened window. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect life beginning to crack at the edges. Just get me the information. Quickly. She ended the call and stood in the darkness, watching the thin line of light beneath the nursery door. Something had to be done. Before the maid forgot her place. Before Wilton forgot his. Florence's scream echoed through the east wing at precisely 7 a.m. My bracelet. Someone has stolen my diamond bracelet. Jessica was in the kitchen preparing Theodore's morning bottle when she heard it. The entire household staff froze, Mrs. Chin mid-pour with a coffee pot, Marcus the butler halfway through polishing silver, Anna and Patricia exchanging wide-eyed glances across the preparation table. Florence's heels struck the marble floors like gunshots as she descended the main staircase. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her silk robe, her face a careful mask of distress and fury. I want every room searched. Every single one. That bracelet was a family heirloom worth $500,000, and it was in my jewelry case last night. Mrs. Chun set down the coffee pot with trembling hands. Mrs. McCubbin, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. It's theft. Florence's eyes swept across the assembled staff and landed on Jessica like a hawk spotting prey. We'll start with the newest employees. Miss Torres, I'd like your room searched first. The blood drained from Jessica's face. Mrs. McCubbin, I would never. Then you have nothing to worry about, do you? 10 minutes later, Jessica stood in the doorway of her small quarters in the staff wing, watching as Florence personally oversaw the search. Mrs. Chun turned out drawers with apologetic glances. Marcus checked the closet. Patricia lifted the mattress. Wait, Florence said sharply. What's that? Beneath the mattress, wrapped in tissue paper, was the bracelet. Diamonds caught the morning light, throwing rainbow fractals across the white walls. Jessica's legs went weak. That's not. I've never seen that before. I didn't save it. Florence's voice could have frozen fire. Mrs. Chun, call the police. No. Wilton's voice cut through the room. He stood in the doorway in his running clothes, chest still heaving from running up the stairs 2 at a time. He must have taken them when he heard the commotion. Wilton, she stole. Let me see the bracelet. He held out his hand. Florence hesitated, then retrieved it from the tissue paper, placing it in his palm with theatrical delicacy. Wilton examined it carefully, turning it over, studying the clasp, the setting, the diamonds themselves. Then he looked up at his wife, his expression unreadable. You're wearing your diamond earrings, he said quietly. And your diamond necklace. And that's your diamond wedding set on your finger. So what? I can wear what You never wear diamonds with other diamonds, Florence. You've told me that 100 times. Said it was gauche, that it showed a lack of sophistication. So why would this particular bracelet be so important that you'd tear apart the house looking for it at 7 in the morning? Unless you already knew exactly where it would be found. The silence that followed was deadly. Florence's face went through several colors, white, then red, then a splotchy combination of both. How dare you suggest, everyone out, Wilton said. Now. The staff evacuated like water through a drain. Jessica was the last to leave, her legs unsteady, her mind reeling. As she reached the hallway, she heard Florence's voice rise to a shriek. She's manipulating you. Can't you see what she's doing? What I see, Wilton said coldly, is my wife framing an innocent woman. Jessica didn't hear the rest. She made it to the bathroom before her knees gave out entirely. An hour later, Wilton found her in the nursery, holding Theodore and staring out the window with hollow eyes. Jessica. He closed the door behind him. I owe you an apology. Again. She didn't turn around. You should fire me. This is only going to get worse. I'm not firing you. He moved closer. Florence won't admit it, but I know what she did. And I'm sorry. Why? The word came out broken. Why would she hate me this much? Wilton was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Because she sees what I see. That Theodore loves you. That you're good and honest and everything this house hasn't been for a very long time. And that terrifies her. Jessica finally turned to face him. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Understanding, connection, the dangerous recognition of two lonely people finding unexpected solace. Tell me about your family, Wilton said softly. Your real story. Not the file version. So she did. About Maria and Sophia and Gabriel. About her parents' accident on the wet highway outside Manila. About leaving university 3 credits from finishing her first year of clinical rotations. About the weight of being the eldest, the responsible one, the one who had to choose survival over dreams. Wilton listened without interrupting, and when she finished, his eyes were suspiciously bright. I'm going to make sure you finish your degree, he said. When Theodore is older, when the time is right. I promise you that. Mr. McCubbin, Wilton. Please. Just Wilton. The intimacy of his first name felt dangerous on her tongue. But she said it anyway, soft as a prayer, and watched something in his expression shift, crack open, just slightly. They both knew in that moment that they'd crossed a line they could never uncross. Upstairs, Florence stood at her bedroom window, watching them through the nursery glass. She picked up her phone and dialed. Marcus? It's time for phase 2. Theodore's fever spiked at midnight. Jessica woke to the baby monitor's crackling transmission of his distressed whimpers, not his usual cry, but something weaker, more frightening. She was in the nursery within seconds, her hand against his forehead confirming what she'd feared. 102.8 degrees. She'd already stripped him down to his diaper and begun sponging him with lukewarm water when Wilton appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled, wearing only pajama pants and a t-shirt. Jessica had never seen him so undone. How high? His voice was tight with fear. 102.8. I've given him infant acetaminophen. It should break in the next hour. She kept her tone calm, professional, even as her own heart raced. Babies spike fevers quickly. It's probably just a virus. Should we take him to the hospital? Not yet. If it reaches 104 or he has trouble breathing, yes. But for now we watch him. Wilton nodded and pulled the rocking chair closer to the changing table where Jessica worked. Then I'm staying. They fell into a rhythm, Jessica sponging Theodore's feverish skin, checking his temperature every 20 minutes, while Wilton paced and watched and tried not to fall apart. By 3 a.m., the fever had dropped to 100.2, and Theodore had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep in Jessica's arms. She sank into the rocking chair, and Wilton collapsed onto the small ottoman beside her, their knees nearly touching in the cramped space. The nursery was dim, lit only by the small lamp shaped like a crescent moon. Outside, rain had begun to fall, drumming against the windows in a steady rhythm. You're good at this, Wilton said quietly. Being needed. Jessica glanced at him. His face was haggard, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. You were here too. That's what matters. I don't know how to be what he needs. The words came out raw, unguarded. I married someone I respected. I thought love would come. It never did. And now I have a son, and I don't know how to be the father he deserves. My own father was cold, distant. He saw me as a successor, not a child. I'm terrified his voice broke. I'm terrified I'll do the same. Jessica's chest ached. You're here, aren't you? At 3 a.m, worried sick, refusing to leave. That's how you start. The rest you learn as you go. Wilton looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression made the air between them feel electric, dangerous. How did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just someone who learned that showing up is sometimes the only thing we can do. The silence stretched. Rain drummed against the windows. Theodore's breathing was soft and steady between them. Wilton reached out, whether for comfort or connection, Jessica would never know, and his hand brushed hers on the arm of the rocking chair. The touch was brief, accidental, but it sent lightning through her entire body. She saw the same shock register on his face. For one suspended moment, neither of them moved. His fingers lingered near hers, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his skin. Close enough that one slight shift would intertwine them completely. This can't happen. Wilton's voice was hoarse as he pulled back, standing abruptly. You work for me. Florence would destroy you. I can't, I won't let that happen. Jessica nodded, not trusting her voice. Her hand felt cold where his had been. I should go, Wilton said, but he didn't move. He stood there, backlit by the moon lamp, looking at her with such longing it hurt to witness. Jessica, I don't. She cut him off gently. Don't say something we can't take back. He nodded, swallowed hard, and finally turned toward the door. But at the threshold, he paused. Thank you. For loving my son better than I knew how to. Then he was gone, and Jessica was alone with Theodore and the rain and the ghost of a touch that had changed everything. 3 floors up, in the West Wing master suite, Florence McCubbin sat in darkness, her eyes fixed on the nursery monitor she'd had installed weeks ago. The screen showed Jessica in the rocking chair, illuminated by soft light, cradling Theodore with a tenderness that made Florence's stomach turn. She'd watched the entire scene. Seen Wilton's hand reach for Jessica's. Seen the way they'd looked at each other, the kind of look Florence had spent 5 years trying and failing to earn. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into the leather armrest of her chair until her fingers went white. She picked up her phone and typed a single message to Marcus Ashford. Accelerate the timeline. I want her gone by the end of the month. The response came immediately. Understood. I'll make it permanent. Florence smiled in the darkness, her face a mask of cold satisfaction. Some problems required drastic solutions. And Jessica Torres had just become a problem too big to ignore. The schedule changes started small. Jessica's 2 days off became 1, then none. Her 8-hour shifts stretched to 12. Then 14. When she mentioned it to Mrs. Chun, the housekeeper shrugged apologetically. Mrs. McCubbin's orders. We're short-staffed. They weren't short-staffed. Florence was simply making sure Jessica was too exhausted to be effective. Then came the whispers. Jessica would enter the kitchen, and conversations would stop mid-sentence. She caught Anna and Patricia exchanging knowing looks. Marcus the butler began treating her with cold formality, as if she'd committed some unspoken transgression. It was Mrs. Chun who finally told her, voice low and apologetic, "There are rumors, Jessica, about you and Mr. McCubbin. People are saying inappropriate things." Jessica's face burned. Nothing has happened. We've never, I believe you, dear. But Mrs. McCubbin has been asking questions. Making suggestions. Mrs. Chen's expression was pained. Be careful. Theodore's schedule became chaos. His feeding times shifted without explanation, sometimes early, sometimes late, always different from what Jessica had carefully established. His sleep routine, once predictable, became erratic. When he cried from hunger or exhaustion, Florence would appear with other staff members to witness Jessica's incompetence. I thought you had medical training, Florence said one afternoon, her voice dripping with false concern as Theodore wailed in Jessica's arms. Perhaps you're not as qualified as Wilton believed. Jessica lost weight. Her uniforms hung loose. Dark circles bloomed under her eyes. She began making small mistakes, forgetting to restock the nursery, misplacing Theodore's favorite blanket. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make her doubt herself. Then Maria called. "Ate Jessica." Her sister's voice was thick with tears. "It's Gabriel. His appendix ruptured. He needs emergency surgery. They won't do it without payment up front. 20,000 pesos. I don't know what to do." 20,000 pesos. About $350. Jessica had sent her entire last paycheck home to cover school fees. She wouldn't be paid again for 2 weeks. Her hands shook as she knocked on Florence's private sitting room door. "Mrs. McCubbin? May I speak with you?" Florence looked up from her tablet, one perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "Yes. I need to request a small advance on my salary. My brother in Manila needs emergency surgery, and no." The word was flat, final. "Please, Mrs. McCubbin. It's just $350. I can have it deducted from my next 3 paychecks." "I said no, Miss Torres." Florence's smile was cruel, satisfied. "Perhaps this is a sign you should reconsider whether this position is right for you. The stress seems to be affecting your performance. Maybe you'd be happier somewhere else. Somewhere more appropriate for someone of your background." Jessica stood frozen, the words landing like physical blows. "That will be all," Florence said, returning to her tablet. Jessica made it to the laundry room before she shattered. She collapsed against the industrial washing machines, great gasping sobs tearing through her chest. Gabriel was 8 years old. 8. And she couldn't even save enough to keep him alive. "Jessica." She looked up through blurred vision to find Wilton in the doorway, his face stricken. "What happened?" He crossed to her in 3 strides. "Tell me." So she did. All of it. The impossible shifts, the rumors, the sabotaged schedules, Florence's refusal, Gabriel's surgery. The words poured out between sobs, and Wilton's expression grew darker with each revelation. "I'll wire the money immediately," he said. "Give me your sister's information." "I can't accept. It's not a gift. It's your salary, advanced. And tomorrow, I'm fixing this." But when he confronted Florence that night, Jessica heard their voices through the walls, the first real fight of their marriage, vicious and raw. "You're torturing her." "I'm protecting this family from a woman who's manipulating you. She saved our son's life. And now you're in love with her." Florence's scream was primal. "Do you think I'm blind? Do you think I don't see the way you look at her?" Silence. The terrible kind that confirms truth. "I want a divorce," Florence said, her voice turning cold and calculated. "And I want full custody of Theodore. Let's see how much your little maid is worth when you lose everything." "Florence, try me, Wilton. My father still has friends in family court. Your business partners are already concerned about your judgment. How do you think they'll react when I tell them you're having an affair with the help? Choose. Her or your son." When Wilton emerged from Florence's suite an hour later, His face was gray, defeated. He found Jessica waiting in the hallway, having heard everything. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. Jessica understood what he couldn't say. He'd backed down. Chosen Theodore's safety over everything else, including her, including himself. The marriage wasn't just broken now. It was a war zone. And Jessica was trapped in the crossfire. The private investigator's report landed on Florence's desk 3 days later. She read it twice, her jaw tightening with each page. Jessica Torres. No criminal record, no suspicious associations, no secret vices. She sent money home religiously. Attended online mass every Sunday. Her university professors remembered her as brilliant and kind. Her former neighbors in Manila called her an angel who sacrificed everything for her family. Florence threw the report across her sitting room. If Jessica wouldn't provide the ammunition for her own destruction, Florence would manufacture it herself. The cash came from her private safe, $50,000 in unmarked bills, withdrawn over months from various accounts. Florence wrapped it in plain brown paper and waited until Jessica's scheduled day off, when the girl would be at the community clinic volunteering her medical skills for free. Of course she would. Florence let herself into Jessica's quarters with a master key. The room was painfully neat, bed made with hospital corners, textbooks stacked alphabetically, a small photo of 3 children tucked into the mirror frame. Florence felt nothing as she shoved the package deep into the bottom dresser drawer, beneath Jessica's spare uniforms. The call to immigration was brief, her voice disguised with a handkerchief over the phone. "I want to report suspicious activity. Jessica Torres, Philippine national, working at the McCubbin estate. Large amounts of cash in her possession. Possible illegal activity." They came for Jessica at 6 a.m. the next morning. Jessica was preparing Theodore's bottle when the federal agents knocked. She answered in her nightgown, confused and terrified, and could only watch as they searched her room with clinical efficiency. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us." The interrogation room was gray and cold. 8 hours of the same questions repeated in different configurations. Where did the money come from? Who gave it to you? What were you planning to do with it? Jessica answered truthfully, desperately, "I don't know, no one, I didn't know it was there." They didn't believe her. Or rather, they couldn't prove otherwise. The bills were untraceable. Her story was consistent. But the money had been in her possession, and that was enough for a formal investigation. She was released at 3 p.m. with instructions not to leave the county. At the estate, Theodore had been screaming for 6 hours straight. Florence had tried everything: bottles, toys, music, different rooms. Nothing worked. He cried until he vomited, then cried more, his face purple with distress. By the time Wilton rushed home from an emergency board meeting, the baby's voice was hoarse, his body trembling with exhaustion. "Where is Jessica?" Wilton demanded. "How should I know?" Florence's own composure was cracking. "She's his caretaker. She should be here." Wilton tried calling. Jessica's phone went to voicemail. He was on the verge of calling hospitals when the gate security informed him she'd just returned in a taxi, looking upset. He found her in her quarters, sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at nothing. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face hollow with shock. "Jessica." He knelt in front of her. "Theodore's been crying for hours. What happened? Where were you?" She told him in a flat, emotionless voice. The agents. The interrogation. The money she'd never seen before appearing in her drawer like evidence in a crime she didn't commit. Wilton's face went white. "Someone planted it." "I know. I'll call my lawyers. We'll fight this. I should quit." Jessica's voice cracked. Before this gets worse. Before they deport me or arrest me or, she couldn't finish. No. Wilton grabbed her hands. Absolutely not. Someone is doing this to you. Someone wants you gone. I will find out who, and I will destroy them. But even as he said it, Jessica saw it, the briefest flicker in his eyes. A moment of uncertainty. A whisper of doubt. He believed her. She was almost certain he believed her. But there was that tiny sliver of what if. And that sliver cut deeper than any of Florence's machinations. I need to see Theodore, she whispered. The moment Jessica entered the nursery, Theodore's screams stopped. He reached for her with desperate hands, his tear-stained face pressed against her neck as if she were oxygen itself. Within minutes, he was asleep, his breathing finally steady. Wilton watched from the doorway, and when Jessica looked up, she saw something shift in his expression, the doubt replaced by certainty. I know who's doing this, he said quietly. So do I, Jessica replied. But knowing and proving were two different things. And Florence was just getting started. Florence prepared Theodore's bedtime bottle herself, something she'd never done before. The mild sedative dissolved instantly in the warm formula, colorless and tasteless. Just enough to make him sleep deeply, not enough to harm. She'd consulted with Marcus's contact, a disgraced pharmacist who asked no questions for the right price. She fed Theodore in the nursery at 8 p.m., watching his eyelids grow heavy with a satisfaction that felt almost maternal. By 8:30, he was unconscious in his crib, his breathing slow and steady. Florence waited until 3 a.m. The estate was silent. She'd made sure Jessica had worked a brutal 14-hour shift. The girl would be dead to the world. Florence lifted Theodore from his crib with surprising tenderness. He didn't stir. The walk to the staff wing felt longer than it was. Florence's heart pounded, but her hands remained steady. She'd planned this perfectly. Every detail accounted for. Every outcome controlled. Jessica's door was unlocked. The girl was too trusting, too naive. Florence slipped inside and placed Theodore beside Jessica on the narrow bed. The baby curled instinctively toward warmth, and Jessica, still asleep, unconsciously wrapped an arm around him. Florence allowed herself a small smile. Then she went back to her suite and began to scream. Theodore! Theodore! Her voice echoed through the marble halls, raw and hysterical. Someone help! My baby's gone. Oh God, someone took my baby. Lights blazed on throughout the estate. Staff members rushed into the hallways in various states of undress. Florence, in her silk nightgown with her hair artfully disheveled, collapsed against the nursery doorway. He's gone, she sobbed to Mrs. Chun. Someone took him from his crib. Call 911. Call 911 now. The police arrived within 12 minutes. Florence had given them a perfect narrative: the troubled young maid, the attachment that bordered on obsession, the recent investigation by immigration authorities suggesting desperation. Check her quarters, Florence told the officers, her voice breaking. Please, check the staff wing. Jessica Torres. She's been too attached. I should have seen it. They found Jessica exactly where Florence knew they would. Jessica woke to flashlight beams cutting through darkness and voices shouting commands. She couldn't process what was happening. Rough hands pulling Theodore from her arms, her own hands being wrenched behind her back, cold metal clicking around her wrists. No, wait, I don't understand. Her voice was thick with sleep and confusion. Jessica Torres, you're under arrest for suspicion of kidnapping and child endangerment. What? No. I didn't. Theodore, where did you? She tried to remember. Had she gone to the nursery? Had she brought him here? Her mind was blank, fogged with exhaustion. I didn't take him. I swear I didn't take him. The police hauled her to her feet, Theodore now screaming in another officer's arms. Jessica looked down the hallway and saw them, all of them. Mrs. Chun with her hand over her mouth. Marcus stone-faced. Anna and Patricia whispering. And Wilton. He stood at the end of the corridor in his pajama pants and undershirt, his hair wild, his face a mask of horror. Their eyes met across the distance. "Wilton, please," Jessica's voice broke. "I didn't do this. I don't know how he got here. You have to believe me." Wilton stared at her, at Jessica in handcuffs, at his screaming son, at the impossible scene before him. And Jessica watched his expression cycle through shock, confusion, and then, just for one terrible second, doubt. It was barely there. A flicker. A hesitation. But she saw it. The last piece of her heart that had been holding together shattered. Jessica stopped struggling. Stopped explaining. She went silent and limp as they led her past Wilton, past Florence, who was now sobbing theatrically into an officer's shoulder, past all the people who'd never see her as anything but the help who'd overstepped. "Jessica," Wilton's voice followed her. She didn't look back. Outside, news vans were already arriving, their cameras catching everything: the handcuffed maid, the crying billionaire mother, the exclusive estate in chaos. Florence had made one anonymous call to a local news outlet 3 minutes after calling 911. Perfect timing. As Jessica was pushed into the back of the police cruiser, she caught one final glimpse through the estate's windows. Florence stood framed in golden light, Theodore now in her arms, playing the devoted mother reunited with her stolen child. And she was looking directly at Jessica with a smile of absolute triumph. Jessica closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. She'd lost. Florence had won. And the man she'd fallen in love with had doubted her, even for just a moment. That was the wound that would never heal. The holding cell was gray concrete and fluorescent lights. Jessica sat on the metal bench for 72 hours, staring at nothing, saying nothing. They'd assigned her a public defender who kept using words like plea deal and mitigating circumstances. She barely heard him. All she could see was Wilton's face. That moment of doubt. At the estate, Theodore was dying by inches. He refused every bottle Florence offered, turning his head away and screaming until his voice went hoarse. He wouldn't sleep, wouldn't be consoled, wouldn't stop crying. By the second day, a rash had spread across his chest and back. By the third day, he'd lost nearly a pound, catastrophic for a 6-month-old baby. Dr. Reeves made a house call and emerged from the nursery white-faced. "This is failure to thrive," she told Wilton grimly. "His vitals are declining. If this continues another 24 hours, I'm legally obligated to report suspected child neglect. He needs to be hospitalized." "He needs Jessica," Wilton said quietly. "Then get her here." But Jessica was in custody, and Florence had made sure the charges were serious enough that bail was set at $50,000. Wilton posted it immediately, but the legal machinery moved slowly. Release processing could take days. He didn't have days. That night, unable to sleep as Theodore's cries echoed through the estate, Wilton made a decision. He called the best digital forensics team in the country. "I want every piece of data from my home security system for the past 6 months. Everything. Including deleted files." They worked through the night. What they found made Wilton's blood run cold. The first video was time-stamped 3:07 a.m., the night of Jessica's arrest. Florence, captured by the hallway camera she'd apparently forgotten about, carrying Theodore's sleeping form through the east wing toward the staff quarters. Timestamp 3:52 a.m. showed her returning alone. 4:01 a.m. showed her in the nursery, checking the empty crib. 4:03 a.m., she began to scream. But there was more. Footage from 2 weeks prior. Florence meeting Marcus Ashford, not Marcus the butler, but Marcus Ashford, Wilton's business rival, at a restaurant downtown. Their body language was intimate. The kiss at the end was unmistakable. More meetings. A hotel in Chelsea. Marcus's office building, where Florence arrived at noon and didn't leave until evening. The forensics team had also pulled financial records. Wire transfer authorizations to a Monaco bank account in Florence's maiden name. Nearly $3 million, moved incrementally over 4 months. Divorce papers drafted but not filed, with custody demands that would have destroyed Wilton. Wilton watched the security footage 3 times. The way Florence had carried Theodore so carefully, so calculatedly. The way she'd placed him in Jessica's bed and stepped back to admire her work before leaving. The cold precision of it. He'd been married to a stranger. No, he'd been married to a monster. "Get my lawyer," he told his assistant. "And tell Florence I need to see her in my study. Now." Florence arrived 20 minutes later, immaculate as always. She faltered when she saw Wilton's lawyer, Robert Chun, sitting beside the desk with a laptop open. "What's this about?" Her voice was controlled, but Wilton saw the fear in her eyes. "Sit down, Florence." "I'd rather stand." "Sit down." She sat. Robert turned the laptop toward her and pressed play. Florence watched herself carry Theodore through the hallway. Her face remained impassive, but her hands clenched in her lap. "We have everything," Wilton said quietly. "The kidnapping. The planted evidence. Your affair with Marcus Ashford. The money you've been hiding. All of it." Silence. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Wilton's voice shook. "Did you think you could destroy an innocent woman and I'd just accept it?" She was destroying us. Florence's composure finally cracked. "Don't you see? She was taking my place. My son preferred her. You were falling in love with her. Every time you looked at that girl, you looked alive in a way you've never looked at me. What was I supposed to do? Just stand by and let her destroy everything I've built?" "Built? You mean bought. You married me for money, Florence. Not love. Never love. And you married me for convenience." Florence stood, her voice rising. "Don't pretend you're the victim here. We had an arrangement. A partnership. She threatened that. She made you want things we'd agreed didn't matter. Love. Passion. All that messy, destructive nonsense. I was protecting what was ours. By drugging our son? By framing an innocent woman? By committing felonies?" Florence's smile was bitter. "You'll never prove the drugging. The rest? Well, that depends on what you want, Wilton. A scandal? Your name dragged through divorce court? Custody battles that will destroy Theodore? Or we can make this go away. Quietly. I'll drop the charges against Jessica. I'll leave. You'll never see me again. But it'll cost you." "Get out," Wilton said. "Pack your things and get out of my house. You have 2 hours before I call the police and have you arrested." Florence stared at him, and for the first time, he saw genuine emotion cross her face. Not anger or fear, but something closer to loss. "You really do love her," Florence whispered. "I never knew you at all," Wilton replied. She left without another word. Wilton sat in the silence afterward, his head in his hands, trying to understand how he'd shared 5 years of his life with someone so utterly capable of evil. And knowing that Jessica was still in a cell, still believing he doubted her, still broken by that one terrible moment. He had to fix this. He had to make her understand. If she'd even let him try. Wilton arrived at the detention center at 6 a.m. with his lawyer and a check for Jessica's bail. The processing took 2 hours, 2 hours of pacing and paperwork while Theodore's cries echoed in his memory. When Jessica finally emerged through the security doors, she looked like a ghost. Her uniform was wrinkled, her hair tangled, her eyes hollow. She saw Wilton waiting and immediately turned away, heading toward the exit. "Jessica, please." She kept walking. Wilton caught up to her on the steps outside, the morning sun harsh and unforgiving. "Jessica, stop. Just listen. I can't do this." Her voice was raw. "I can't look at you and see that doubt again. I can't." "I know." Wilton moved in front of her, and then, in full view of everyone, he dropped to his knees on the concrete steps. "I know I doubted you for one moment. One terrible moment. And I will spend the rest of my life making up for it if you'll let me." Jessica stared down at him, tears streaming down her face. "Florence confessed everything," Wilton continued, his voice breaking. "I have proof. The security footage, the affair, all of it. You were right about everything, and I was a coward for not seeing it sooner. Theodore needs you. I need you. Please come home." "I can't be your employee anymore," Jessica whispered. "I can't be something you hide or feel guilty about, or, then don't be." Wilton stood, taking her hands. "No more secrets. No more power imbalance. If we do this, if you give me another chance, it's as equals. Partners. Or not at all." Jessica searched his face for a long moment. "I want to finish my degree. I'll fund it. Full scholarship, no strings attached. I want my own space. My own life outside of Theodore. You'll have it. And I need time, Wilton. To trust you again. To trust that you won't," her voice broke. "That you won't look at me like that again. However long it takes." He brought her hands to his lips. "I'm not going anywhere." The custody trial became a media circus. Florence's lawyers painted Jessica as a manipulative gold-digger who'd seduced a vulnerable widower, except Wilton had never been widowed, and Florence was very much alive and having an affair. Medical experts testified about Theodore's failure to thrive, about attachment disorders and maternal neglect. Jessica took the stand and told the truth, all of it, her voice steady even as Florence's lawyer tried to break her. The judge awarded Wilton full custody within 20 minutes of deliberation. 18 months later, the divorce was finalized. Florence received her settlement, substantially less than she'd planned, and disappeared to Monaco with Marcus Ashford. She never contacted Theodore again. Wilton stepped back from his company, promoting his COO and taking a role as advisory chairman. He wanted to be present, really present, for Theodore's childhood, for Jessica's return to medical school, for the slow, patient rebuilding of trust. They didn't rush. Jessica moved into a small apartment near campus. They had dinner twice a week. Wilton would bring Theodore to her study sessions, and they'd order takeout and build pillow forts while Jessica highlighted anatomy textbooks. It was ordinary and domestic, and nothing like the life either of them had imagined. It was perfect. On a beach at sunset, with Theodore building sandcastles 10 feet away under his nanny's watchful eye, Wilton finally asked. "I was half alive before you," he said, taking Jessica's hand. "Going through motions, playing a role. You and Theodore made me whole. You made me want to be better. To be real." He pulled out a simple diamond ring, nothing like Florence's ostentatious jewelry. "Marry me. Not because of what I can give you, but because of who we can become together." Jessica looked at the ring, at Wilton, at Theodore laughing in the sand. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." They married 6 months later in a small ceremony on the same beach. Theodore, nearly 2 years old, carried the rings down the aisle in a tiny basket and promptly sat down to play with the sand, making everyone laugh. Jessica wore a simple white dress. Wilton cried through his vows. Her siblings flew in from Manila and met their brother-in-law while tackling him with hugs. No society pages covered it. No cameras captured it. It was theirs alone. 2 years later, Theodore was a joyful 3-year-old with his mother's smile and his father's curiosity. Jessica was completing her medical residency, finally Dr. Torres in all but dissertation. Wilton coached Theodore's toddler soccer team, badly, enthusiastically, covered in grass stains and pure joy. On a Saturday morning, Jessica watched from the sidelines as Wilton taught Theodore to kick the ball, both of them falling over laughing when they missed. Her pager buzzed with a hospital message, but for once, she ignored it. This moment mattered more. "They say love doesn't work across different worlds," she murmured to herself, smiling as Theodore ran to her shouting, "Mama, did you see?" She caught him in her arms, breathing in the scent of grass and sunshine and unconditional love. Wilton jogged over and wrapped his arms around both of them, and for the first time in her life, Jessica understood what home really meant. Not a place. Not a title. Not security or status. Just this, 3 people who'd chosen each other, despite everything, and kept choosing each other every day after. That was the real happy ending.